Hey everyone, and a special welcome to all you aspirants out there. Today we're diving deep into the latest consumer price index data for September 2025. Our mission is simple: to give you all the key numbers, the core concepts, and the crucial insights you're going to need to absolutely nail it in your exams. So let's jump right in. And here it is, the single most important number from this entire release: 1.54%. This is our headline inflation for September 2025. And why is this such a big deal? Well, because this is the lowest inflation rate India has seen since all the way back in June of 2017. A truly significant figure. But a number is just a number until you understand the story behind it. And believe me, this one tells a massive story about India's economy, about policy, and about the money in your pocket. Getting this right is critical, not just for your prelims, but for your mains too. So are you ready? Let's decode it together. To really get a grip on this, we're going to follow a very clear roadmap. First, we'll decode headline inflation, get the big picture right. Then, we'll zoom in on the fascinating story of food inflation. After that, we'll take a look at what's happening in other key sectors. And to finish it all off, I'm going to give you a custom-made revision cheat sheet with every single thing you need to remember. Okay, first things first, let's decode headline inflation. It's so important that we build a really solid foundation here, because this is where so many of those tricky objective questions come from. Let's get these concepts down cold. So what in the world is the CPI? Well, think of it as the price tag on an average person's monthly shopping basket. It measures retail inflation by tracking the prices of things we all buy: food, transport, healthcare, you name it. Now, the absolute key fact you must memorize here is the base year, 2012. I can't stress this enough. It's a classic exam question, so make sure you've got that one locked in. You're going to hear two terms thrown around a lot: headline inflation and basis points. Headline inflation is just the big, all-inclusive number. In our case, that 1.54%. It's the total deal. And a basis point, or BPS, sounds complicated, but it's super simple. It's just 1/100th of a percent. So when you hear that inflation fell by 53 BPS, all it means is that it dropped by 0.53%. That's it. Context is everything, right? Just look at this table. It shows you why that 1.54% is so remarkable. Look at the massive year-on-year drop. We've gone from 5.49% last September all the way down to 1.54% now. That is a steep, steep decline. And even compared to just last month, it's a solid fall. The key story here is this powerful downward trend. So the big question is why? Why this dramatic fall? Well, there are three main reasons. First, and this is a critical concept for your exams, is the base effect. See, inflation is a year-on-year comparison. Because the base number from last September was really high at 5.49%, it makes any increase this year look smaller by comparison. It's like jumping off a very high platform. The ground seems to come up faster. That's the base effect. Second, a massive drop in food prices. And third, just a general cool down across a whole range of items. And that brings us perfectly to our second chapter, the story of food inflation. Honestly, this was the number one reason, the main character in the story of that low headline number. You are seeing that right, negative 2.28%. That is the Consumer Food Price Index, or CFPI. It literally means that on average, your groceries were actually cheaper than they were last year. This is the fourth month in a row of negative food inflation, and it's the lowest it has been since way back in December 2018. Now, here's a little detail that examiners absolutely love to ask about: the rural-urban divide. As you can see, food prices fell everywhere, but the drop was just a little bit more pronounced in urban areas, at negative 2.47%, compared to rural India. These are the kinds of nuances that show you really understand the data. So which groceries in particular got cheaper? The really important thing to notice here is that it wasn't just one or two things. This was a really broad-based decline across so many major food groups. Vegetables were the leader of the pack, for sure, but oils, fruits, pulses, and even cereals all played a huge part in pulling that index down. So how on earth are you supposed to remember that long list in the middle of a high-pressure exam? Let's use a mnemonic. Just remember VOFPCF. And to make it stick, think of this sentence: very old farmers produce cheap eggs and fuel. It's a little goofy, I know, but it's contextual and it'll pop right into your head when you need to list out those key drivers. Okay, so we've nailed the food story. But the economy is a lot more than just food, right? So let's move on to our third section and take a snapshot of what's happening sector by sector. This is where we get the full picture. And this is where the story gets really interesting and a bit complicated. Because while your groceries got cheaper, essential services did not. Just look at this. Health inflation is still chugging along at over 4%. Housing is almost there too. This is what economists call sticky inflation, and it shows a really important split in the economy. The price of goods is falling, but the cost of crucial services is still rising. All right, now for what might be the most dramatic part of this entire breakdown. We're going to zoom in from whole sectors to individual items. You can think of this as a tale of two very, very different shopping carts. In our first shopping cart, some prices have just gone through the roof. I mean, look at coconut oil, up an unbelievable 108.7% year on year. Gold and silver also saw huge price jumps. This just goes to show you that even when overall inflation is low, specific items can still put a massive strain on family budgets. But then, in our second shopping cart, prices have absolutely plummeted. Garlic prices were more than cut in half, down over 55%. And the classic trio, onions, potatoes, and arhar dal, all got way, way cheaper. This right here, this slide perfectly illustrates why that overall food inflation number was negative. It all came down to these specific items. Okay, team. Let's bring it all home. This final section is everything. This is your revision cheat sheet. If you're going to screenshot anything, make it these next few slides. We've distilled everything down to exactly what you need to know for your exam. First, the fundamentals. You have to be able to define these in your sleep. You need to know what CPI and CPI are. You absolutely must remember the base year, 2012. And you have to be ready to explain both headline inflation and, of course, that all-important base effect. Get these right, and you've got a solid foundation. Next up, the hard data. For any question that asks for specifics, these are your numbers. The headline rate, 1.54%. Food inflation, a striking negative 2.28%. Remember the rural-urban split, with urban inflation being a bit higher. And finally, that month-on-month change, a fall of 53 basis points. Commit these to memory. And finally, for those high-scoring analytical answers, you have to talk about the big picture trends. So, trend number 1, there was a significant deceleration in inflation. Trend number 2, this was overwhelmingly driven by negative food inflation. But the third point, the one that makes for a top-tier answer, is the divergence. The fact that falling food prices are hiding the fact that costs for services like health and housing are still stubbornly high. And look, you don't have to just take my word for it. This quote is pulled directly from the official government press release. It confirms everything we've talked about. The favorable base effect and the broad decline in food prices were the main culprits. Using the official language can really add weight to your answers. So we'll leave you with a question to ponder, something to really think about for your mains preparation. Given this weird split, cheap food but expensive services, what does this all mean for the average Indian consumer? And more importantly, what should the RBI do next? Answering that is what takes you from just knowing the data to truly understanding the economy. We hope this has been a huge help. Now go out there and keep studying smart.